been a number of other elements put into the transparency and accountability regime that people have to be really, really sensitive to. And the CAO has to have that radar, that transparency and accountability radar on all the time. Economic development is a key issue for every CAO these days. During my career, there have been times when economic development hasn't been on the forefront. It's been the challenge of how do we keep up with the growth that's happening. We're into a period in certain parts of Ontario, in fact in the Ontario economy, when there's a lot of competition for economic development across the board. So a CAO has to understand how that plays in, what the opportunities and strengths are in a place like Lambton Shores, and what the various programs with respect to economic development might look like in a place like this. They don't look the same in every part of Ontario, that's for sure. Having and maintaining a professional network relevant to the position. Those are the people that you talk to when you got a problem that you can't talk about at home. You have a group of CAO colleagues that you have come to know, to understand, to learn, to respect, and the ability to share among each other. And it's very interesting whether you're running a city of 350,000 or a municipality of 5,000. It's really interesting how things are often the same, and the people understand each other's challenges. Committed to succession planning and staff development. The two aren't necessarily the same. Succession planning is important. You can have staff development without succession planning. You can have succession planning without staff development. I think it's important to have both of those go. Successful succession planning incorporates both staff development, but not necessarily so. But it's important. It's important to be always growing your own leaders, developing your own people. Again, if you look back 15 years, you might find council saying, well, why should we support these people in their educational efforts? They'll just leave. Well, yeah, but maybe they'll stay. And if they stay, they're going to be better for it. And guess what? If they leave, they might come back to a more senior position. So I think people now recognize that staff development is an important thing to do. And it sends a message to the organization that you folks are important. How well you succeed is important to our organization. Similarly, be sensitive and responsive to the needs of council for advice, training, and support. Responsive means if council asks for something, you do it. Sensitive means that you make some suggestions to council. If you observe, as your CAO, that some program, some material might be useful to council in terms of its development. So it's important to be proactive and reactive both in that way, and that's it. Similarly to the needs of the public for information. Not just respond, but say, wait a minute, what's the best way that we can get this information out to the public? Are we doing everything that we can do reasonably within the resources that we've got? Be able to hit the ground running. I could have put that anywhere. You're looking for someone who can hit the ground running. This next one is believe municipal government to be a place where staff and council can have fun from time to time. This one hit me the other day, and this is as much mine as anyone else's, but it's probably, municipal government has become more difficult in the last 15 years than it was in the 20 years leading up to that, if I can think about my experience. The province changed what people did, quite frankly, what services are delivered. The province encouraged, and in some cases forced, some realignments that have yet to settle into place, quite frankly, and it'll be a generation before we do. And in fact, sometimes if you go to Toronto, they still haven't figured it out. That was the 1954 realignment. So those things happen, and they make it somewhat more uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that people can't have fun from time to time, and people have to believe that. Mayor Weaver, when I first met him, he was on Huron County Council, And at those days, a Huron County Council meeting used to be a very, very enjoyable thing. I think people looked forward to the actual meeting because it was pleasant, enjoyable, and productive. I've been to Huron County Council recently. They don't have as much fun. And that's the same with every council across the province. I work for the City of London. They don't have as much fun even as they used to. So it's.
Would you like to take a question?
I'm happy to.
Yeah, to what do you attribute that? Why don't councils appear to be having fun?
Because A, the economic challenges, that's one of it, in the sense of even, there's an expectation that you can deliver a property tax that is flat in terms of its impact on a per household, and deliver either the same or more services in an environment where there's some inflation in cost of service delivery. People have gotten that sense that you have the least responsive tax, and your job is to keep it down all the time. That's one of the pieces of the puzzle. You're also delivering a lot of services, whether it's at the lower tier or the upper tier, where you have relatively little control over the services that you deliver. Your margin of discretion is relatively small. That makes for some concern. The public doesn't quite see it the way that you do because they don't have all the information and all the background that you do. So
Do you think
those are a couple of reasons.
Do you think it's because too that the public over the last few years seems to be far more ego-driven, and we're all public, and there's a lot of anger out there. I mean, just have to go in your car, get on the road, and someone will flip you the bird if they're not happy, and maybe that anger is also brought to this table because we are all members of the public. And
I don't feel qualified to comment on that.
I just wanted to, just as an observation, I've seen society become far more angry in the last probably 10 years about, doesn't take much to rile people.
It may have become more polarized
Yeah,
than angry, but that's.
polarized.
But I think CAO has to be sensitive to those kinds of public mood changes and mood reactions, the broader political aspects. I mean, you need to know what's happening in the national media in order to function today. We've become more globalized. I mean, again, 20 years ago, the first time Hazel McCallion found herself in front of a judge with respect to conflict of interest, I venture most people didn't hear about that one. Virtually everybody's heard about the one that's underway today, much less the one that was going on last year. There's just that greater transparency. So, but again, you can still have fun in light of all those things. You still be respectful and smile and friendly and all of those things, and set up times for informal sharing. The CAO should look to others for their advice and demonstrate respect for it when offered. That came through. Regardless of who people are, they have something to offer. And I think it's important that the CAO look outwards, downwards, and throughout the organization for that, and understand the framework or the vantage point within which it's offered. You may not agree with it, but at least the fact that somebody thought about it and offered it, you can use it as an educational opportunity. If it's a staff issue, it's a useful time. It just helps in decision making. Know how to be diplomatically assertive should the need arise. Be able to deliver bad news to council sometimes, or bad news to the public, or bad news to staff, or disagree agreeably. That's the other thing. The councillor in the city of Windsor named Hillary Payne, and this is all very public. Hillary was city manager of the city of Windsor for many years. Retired, owns a number of rental properties in the city, still active, and was very active in the issues around approach to the new bridge in Windsor. And in fact, had a lawsuit before he was suing city council. He ran for office, which you can do, and he was elected. And the Windsor Star put a mic in front of Hillary and said, you and the mayor have clashed on a number of occasions. We're going to see some fireworks at council, aren't we? Sparks. Hillary said, No,